Hello?
Afraid I do not have a gavel tonight, so you'll have to trust my voice. My name is Duncan Berry. This is the June 10th meeting of the Harwich Planning Board being held at the Cultural Arts Municipal Building at 204 Sisson Road. This is being held in person and available for viewing on GoToMeeting. According to Mass General Law, anyone who intends to record the meeting must notify the chair, who will then inform all attendees at the start. Is there anyone here that intends to record this meeting? Okay, very good. I declare the meeting open. It's now 6:32, and I'd like to invite you to join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, which may be in some of you. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Appreciate it. And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a piece of business on our agenda this evening that's going to take a little bit less time than the continued hearing. And so we're going to start with case number PB 2025-16, the Town of Harwich, Town Administration requested waiver for site plan review special permit pursuant to the Code of Harwich, Section 325-65F. The White House Field press box's existing second-story deck is proposed to be removed and replaced with a larger deck for the same purposes to observe and to film baseball games. There will be no changes to the existing building. The purpose of the project is to remove an existing second-story 10-by-10 deck to be replaced with a 14-by-16 exterior deck. The application is pursuant to the Code of the Town of Harwich, Section 325-51, 325-55F, and Mass General Law, Chapter 48, Section 9. Location is 83 Oak Street, Harwich, Mass. Assessors Map 50, Parcel E5-0. Property is in the Rural Residential Zoning District. This one.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As part of case PB 2025-16, the project is just to expand the exterior space of the Harwich press box for the Harwich Mariners, and the trigger for site plan review is an expansion of exterior space, and whether it's a municipality or a educational facility, given the location of the deck and their purpose, I would recommend that we grant the waiver as requested by the town administration.
Very good. Do we have any questions from the board? Any questions from the public?
Build it.
So, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to close the hearing. So moved. And a second? Motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So, on to the main event. Oh, yeah, close the motion. The main event. Let's vote on. We just voted to close.
So,
Yes.
I move that the planning board vote to grant a waiver of site plan review for PB 2025-16, based on the following, that in the opinion of the planning board, the application does not substantially change the relationship of the structure to the site, and that the abutting properties and structures, based on those facts, I would move that the planning board grant the waiver of site plan review and allow the application as.
Second. A motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now, on to the next item, which is a continued public hearing till May 13th, 2025 for case number PB 2025-11, SSH Court, LLC, Robert C. DeMarco, manager, 1 Campanelli Drive, Braintree, Mass. 02148, through their agent, Marion Rose, Esquire, Singer and Singer Law Offices, 26 Upper County Road, Dennis, Mass. 02639, seeks approval for a multi-family special permit and site plan review special special permit with request for waivers. Proposed project is to construct a 28-unit multifamily structure and reconfigure parking. Application pursuant to the code of the Harwich, Town of Harwich, sections 325-51, 325-55, Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, sections 9 and 11. Property is located at 606 Route 28, Assessors Map 14, parcel Z18-2, and the parcel is approximately 76,226 square feet. Parcels in the Commercial Village, CB, and Residential Low Density, RL, zoning districts within the Village Commercial Overlay District, VTOD. Ms. Flynn.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. In your packet tonight is a updated staff review as well as a list of updated public correspondence and the applicant's PowerPoint presentation slides as well. The applicant also had submitted a very substantial update to their renovation, site plans, landscaping plans, lighting plan, as well as elevation plans, in addition to other architectural renderings that was part of the packet that was submitted by the applicant. For tonight's purposes, I'm just going to run through a brief overview of slides, and we can begin. Okay, so slide 1, we have just the town of Harwich, and in the red dot. Oops. Okay. So we have the town of Harwich, next slide. And we have downtown Harwich Port, and the project is located to the east side with the red dot, just above Route 28. And you can see downtown Harwich Port to the west side of Bank Street. Next slide, please. And this is the existing site. Again, a little bit closer, you have Bank Street to the west and Melrose Building to the south. Next slide. And this is the a slide of the existing conditions of the existing building of 1,800 square feet, just over 1,800 square feet with 83 parking spaces. Next slide. This is the proposed, also another rendering of the existing conditions. Next slide. And this is the proposed development with the outline in light brown or beige of the existing footprint of the building. You'll notice to the lower left-hand side. The lower left-hand side is an easement that goes directly to the abutting property, Embers Restaurant, and to the east side is the access point for the driveway, and you'll notice to the rear of the property a loading and delivery zone, as well as a dumpster and shed. I will highlight that they have met all of the parking requirements. The minimum building setbacks for this project of 25 feet, the rear setbacks of 25 feet, as well as the side setbacks. The site coverage is less than 80%, and even though there's no building coverage requirement for multifamily, the project still is in compliance with the 50% building coverage as required in the underlying zoning district of the commercial village. The parking requirements are also met. The applicant is proposing 66 spaces with 3 handicap parking spots, and the building height for applicant development is 3.5 stories, with a maximum building of 40 feet in height, which the applicant, the proposed project is less than that. Next slide. The following several slides are just some of the elevations. You'll also see the elevations in the rear of the room. Just to highlight that the applicant has reduced the roof, the highest part of the building to 39 feet, from 39 feet and 6 inches to, it's been reduced by 2.5 feet to 37 feet. Next slide. And for the rear elevations, there are also a reduction in building height as well. Next slide. In addition to the side elevations, so the applicant has taken a great deal of, has considered some of the public testimony in terms of the building size and massing, and they also have added additional architectural features to the windows, to the patios, and as well as adding dormers to the roof to break up some of the building facade. Next slide. So the landscaping plan, the applicant has submitted a very thorough landscaping plan as well as screening plan for the property that is compliant with the town's recommended zoning, landscaping design and screening requirements. We did have a couple of suggestions for some of the replacements of the beach grass with just some additional native plantings. Next slide. And this is also the landscaping plan to the rear of the property. Next slide. The applicant did also consider the lighting plan. All of the exterior lighting will be downward shielded, dark sky compliant. The only comment that in talking with the building department was maybe adding additional lighting to the handicap space. Next slide. And we have tonight VHB, who has also done a stormwater and drainage peer review, which they did feel all of the applicant's responses and VHB's concerns have been addressed. And we also have Michael Santos here to talk about the traffic and parking layout.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Michael Santos with VHB. I'm here tonight on behalf of the town to discuss the traffic and transportation focused peer review. The peer review consists of a review of the March 20th, 2025 traffic study submitted by Chappell Engineering, and also the transportation elements of the site plan. Since then, we have submitted our comments in a letter dated May 20th, and the applicant did respond to those on June 4th. We did have a chance to review them, so I'm just going to go through the peer review and some of the comments that we submitted in their responses. So our task as peer reviewers is to review the traffic operations, site access, safety, methodology, and technical foundation of the traffic study. Again, we also reviewed the transportation elements of the site plan. That includes vehicular parking, ensuring that there's enough parking supply, vehicular circulation through the site, pedestrian access, dimensional elements of the site plan, and operations of the site, which includes deliveries, trash pickup, move in, move out, and things like that. So in general, the way that the traffic study was performed, we're in agreement with the methodology. They did traffic counts. They did conduct trip generation estimates. Again, this is a 28-unit residential project that will replace the existing uses. They looked at site distance measurements at the driveway, which is it's important to have that for safety purposes. And again, we're in general agreement with that. Well, one thing that we did ask for is for them to do a safety evaluation along the stretch of Main Street that abuts the site, just to make sure, identify any safety issues if there are any. They did get back to us, and we reviewed the information, and I think there were 3 crashes over a 5-year period, so I don't think that there are any major vehicular safety issues right now. We did review the site distance at the driveway. It meets the requirements. there is a horizontal curvature and some vegetation to the east. We did ask them to look into that, to see if they can improve sightlines to the east. Something, they had mentioned that they would provide a diagram showing sightlines in the additional materials. Either I missed it or it wasn't submitted, so that's something that we'll have to review at some point. Again, the trip generation is, they reported around 11 trips per hour in the morning and 14 in the evening. They compared it to the existing uses. The existing uses only operate from Memorial Day to Labor Day. And so really all of the morning trips will be new in the afternoon. They'll all be new outside of the peak season. And then what they reported was compared to the existing uses, it's actually going to be a lower trip generator during the evening. So as far as the trip generation goes, it's a pretty low trip generator. We don't really have any concerns with the amount of vehicle trips that are going to and from the site as it relates to the need for any off-site improvements or capacity improvements at nearby intersections. The site access we did review, it's 22 feet wide. We did have some concerns about the parking layout. It looked a little tight based on the dimensions, so we did ask them to provide us vehicle turning maneuvers for emergency vehicles, fire trucks, for passenger vehicles, both into the garage and to the rear parking lot, and also loading trucks, so a box truck that would park in the loading area. They did provide those diagrams. Parking's still a little tight, but it works. So again, we don't have any concerns with how the parking is laid out in the operations will occur for that. Again, the parking is, I believe it's 68 parking spaces on the site, 28 units, so they have plenty of parking for that size project. They also noted that there's a MassDOT project ongoing on Main Street, so we are just asking them to coordinate with MassDOT on, there's a location of a crosswalk that needs to be placed. And we also, again, we haven't followed up with another comment letter, but we may have them look into adding a sidewalk on the north side of Main Street in front of the site. So the outstanding things that will need to be done are coordinating with the fire department. They should sign off on this to make sure that they're okay with the layout so they can maneuver their vehicles in and out of the site. And they will also need to coordinate with MassDOT to obtain an access permit for the driveway. I don't think that has started yet, but they can provide an update if there's been any progress with that. So I'll be here if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board? Yeah.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I just had a couple of questions. When it comes to one of the waivers they're requesting is a reduction in the size of the parking spaces. Any concern from VHB on that point?
Yeah, so this is why we asked them to provide those vehicle turning maneuvers, because I understand that the parking spaces are a little bit smaller than what's required by zoning. So that's what we were making sure that it actually works. And as I said, the vehicles can maneuver in and out of spaces. It is a little tight, but I think that it'll work. And the rear spaces, I don't know how they're going to be used. It's going to be full back there on a day-to-day basis, but yeah. So we're okay with that.
Okay, and just a second follow-up. You had mentioned the DOT needing to approve the entrance. The entrance that currently exists that they're disbanding to move further east is a relatively new entrance for that location. Any concerns with that getting moved further down from your experience with DOT on the town?
No, I think as long as the safety requirements are met, the traffic control is met, so they're gonna control the driveway with a stop sign, which is typical for a driveway like this. And as long as they provide enough stopping sight distance, it should be okay. I don't see why there would be any other issues with that.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions for me. Does anybody else? I just want to make sure that it seems like we have 4 issues outstanding. Fire department sign off. Sorry about that. So I just had 4 basic questions. First of all, that were like hanging issues, the fire department, sightlines, which I think you mentioned, in which I think are in conjunction with the MassDOT new driveway placement, and then finally with the MassDOT conditions for a sidewalk on the north side of 28, and I wanted to get your position about if I'm missing anything, A, or B, if there's anything, any input at this point about that sidewalk issue.
So it's my understanding the MassDOT project is putting a sidewalk on the south side. If there is a desire to have it on the north side as well in front of the site, I think it would provide good pedestrian connectivity around the site and up the driveway. That should be. I don't know if that would be incorporated into the MassDOT. I don't know how that process would work, but that would, if it's within the public right of way, it would need to be done through MassDOT.
So I'm assuming it's the roads will be talking about that. Sorry, we're kind of adjusting this too. There's like a feedback issue up here. I can barely hear myself, but I can hear the microphone of everybody else. So we're going to like do a little feedback loop here. So work with us here. So 1 second. Yeah, Steve, are you online? Steve, you already got to unmute yourself, I guess. Give me a second screen. I see there are 31 people. I saw him up there. Ready to go. 32. All right, Steve. I guess we'll hear from you later. Do we have any further questions from the board, please? Yes.
I have a question about the sightline issue as well. On page 9 of your report, you conducted a desktop review of site distance. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, that east side is the problematic area here. And I think a desktop review is probably not as robust as a visit to that area because the sight lines are very short
Yeah.
there.
We did do a site visit. That was my own desktop review, but I personally didn't visit the site before I did that. We did have somebody visit the site.
You have visited the site?
Somebody from VHB has been there to look at the sight lines, yes.
Okay, because I know 2 things in your report. One on the sight line, the other on the speed, based on the calculation. Correct? On page 9 of your report?
So, yeah, so our comment letter, yeah, so we did mention that the sight distance requirements are based on the vehicle speeds, which I believe were 37 miles per hour. That's an 85th percentile speed. That's what you use to calculate the sight distance requirements. Yeah.
And that affects the stopping distance, is that correct?
The required stopping sight distance is based on speed, yeah. So the higher the speed, you need more distance to safely stop.
So you recommended if the speed was calculated at 37 miles per hour, the stopping distance goes to 408 feet, not 335, correct?
Yes, I think, I'd have to look at it.
Okay, and the reason I'm bringing that up is there's a curve, and this is a very dangerous intersection, right adjacent to this property, and that's a safety concern, okay? And it's related to the traffic studies and whether all these things are, reasonable and accurate.
So, yeah, this was one piece of information that I did request that they look into that a little bit more on the east side of the driveway. I didn't see anything, I didn't see a response to that, so I'm hoping that they can provide some additional information. Really, I think the issue is, when you have the horizontal curve, are there any obstructions that you can remove that are within the public right-of-way that might improve sight lines? So that's really what we're hoping that, if there are any improvements that can be made, that they can identify the improvements for the sight lines.
So that's a request that we can add to our list for the applicant, is that correct?
Yeah, I didn't see it in the materials. Maybe I missed it. But
I didn't see a response from the materials.
yeah, I didn't see the actual plan, so that's really what I'm looking for.
Okay, and I would add to that some calculation for the classic left turn on 28 in the summer from that particular entrance that's proposed.
Great. Harry?
I'm good. Nothing? Any?
Let's see. Do we? So, Attorney Rose, welcome to the new location.
Thank you so much. For the record, I'm Marion Rose from Singer & Singer and Dennis Ford. I'm here on behalf of SSH Fort LLC, or we'll say interchangeably Campanelli, for this project. First, I want to thank you all. I know this is, and particularly the staff and the tech staff and the planning for setting this up. Can you all hear me? I am also hearing an echo. Sure. Okay. How about now? Is it better? Yes. Okay, great. I'm going to move this here. I would like to thank you all for the work to set this up. It's not a small thing. I also want to thank specifically Mr. Peterson for joining us. We appreciate having the full board here to hear this project. And again, I know that's a lot to ask of everyone. In May, when we were here first, we provided an overview for this project. I reviewed the legal standards and how we believe that we meet those standards for this project. And we heard comments from the public and some comments from you all. We're here tonight to provide more detail and also to show you how we responded. And Christine has alluded to that. We've responded, we believe, in meaningful ways to the public comments that were made in the last hearing and in other areas in the community. Tonight we'll hear from Kirsten Braun from Chapel Engineering about the traffic assessment and her responses to VHB peer review, the site plan and stormwater report, the peer responses to that from Kelly Engineering, the site plan updates including the shed location for this new septic plan, the updated photometric plans responding to butters' concerns, the updated landscape plans, the revised elevation showing what again we believe are significant reductions in height and massing of the structure, updated renderings, and Mary's request a 3D automated model of the project as it's been revised to show the context of this project in the neighborhood. In order of presentation, obviously I'm going first. This is the introduction. After that will be Garrett Horsfall from Kelly Engineering. He'll go over the site plans and stormwater. Brian Irrigation from the BSC group will speak briefly about the septic plan, update on that, and the best available nitrogen reducing technology that will be provided. Kirsten Braun will speak to the traffic assessment. Russ Ian from Campanelli Partners will speak to landscape and lighting, the revised elevations, renderings, and the 3D scaled model. And I'll wrap up with how this relates to what we have to show you all to secure a multifamily special permit and a site plan review special permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion. Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. For the record, Garrett Horsfall with Kelly Engineering Group. So I will do a briefer presentation than my last presentation here for the board, but just for everybody's reference again, It's about a 76,000 square foot lot located on Route 28. It's partially within the CE commercial village zone as well as the residential lot density. The low density demonstrated by this blue cyan line running through the north part of the site. Today there's 2 curb cuts accessing the property, one at the central part of the site and then one at the Plan View West, which accesses the Ember Pizza Parlor or restaurant. And this is just a town GIS view of the aforementioned zoning areas for the subject parcel, which is highlighted in the red and yellow dashed boundaries. So this is just a detailed version of the existing conditions plan. Again, about 1,800 square foot facility with 83 surface parking spaces, largely paved the front portion of the site. There's a landscaped area at the rear of the site where the existing septic field is, and the remainder of the site drains through a series of leaching pits in the front portion of the site. So none of the runoff today is off the site, and that's how the proposed design has been modeled and reviewed by the town's consultant as well. All the utilities coming off Route 28 today, and the proposal will do the same. If you go to the next slide, please. So as a result of the peer review and advancements with the design team here, we made some minor modifications to the site plan, with the core of them being in this parking strip here. There were previously 9 surface spaces here, now there are 7. We did reduce 2 spaces, one being for maneuverability into this service space here, which accesses the dumpster as well as a place for an Amazon or a move in and move out type vehicle to park. And then we also did add a 10 by 10 shed to house some of the septic equipment that you will hear further about. It's the most up-to-date nitrogen movement technology, and they're placed throughout the Cape of these type of facilities. Next slide, please. So, as confirmed, sort of by VHB's peer review, we are requesting 3 waivers as a part of this site, and none of these waivers did change as a result of any of these changes that were made. So the first waiver, which I'll speak to, is just the width of the driveway at the curb cut. The local bylaw requires a 50-foot, and due to Mass DOT minimum curb radius standards, we're about 50.6 feet, so there's just slightly over the maximum allowable width. And then the last 2 are reduction in driveway width from 24 to 22 feet and parking space width from 9 by 20 to 9 by 18. 9 by 18 is commonly used parking space size throughout the industry. And given the minimal volume of traffic at this facility and confirmed by the turning analysis movements that we did submit, there is safe maneuverability for all design vehicles to access the site. And I just want to make a note that the fire department, I believe, was present in the last meeting and did confirm that they had no issues with the apparatus into the site. We did provide an exhibit with our response, but we can certainly receive a formal letter from them if that is what is required from the board. And just, so in regards to the stormwater, the changes, it's a very similar version of what you were presented with last time. We did make some minor modifications, and I believe the most substantial modification was, as noted by VHB in the last review session, of modeling this portion of the site up here. We did provide a small infiltration trench in that corner of the site. It just receives runoff from the lawn area, and it does demonstrate that it is capable of holding a 100-year storm at that portion of the site. It's just this small grass area that gets there. The remainder of the site, all paved areas, all roof surfaces are routed to this subsurface system. There was a previous system proposed at the bottom of the ramp. Due to further groundwater investigations and test pits, we have removed that, and now we are taking that up to here via a pump station, and we've remodeled the entire stormwater system with a groundwater adjustment as required, based on the soil conditions that we did encounter as a part of the test pits. And again, the other minor modification that was made was we added some water quality devices to address some water quality concerns that VHB had. All utilities, gas, water, electric, are still at the bottom left of the facility and have not changed as a result of this revision of the plans. In summary, I believe that the revisions that were made as a part of the peer review and our design advancement, relatively minor in nature, and as echoed by VHB, we believe we've addressed the majority of them. There is a couple outstanding issues which we want to discuss further. One being adding a crosswalk at the Ember driveway. Currently, the DOT plans do not have one at that location, but we do believe it would be a safe means of pedestrian access, seeing as the primary pedestrian route is a crosswalk to the entry right there in that corner of the building for pedestrian access to the building is currently proposed. We're glad to work with VHB and DOT to add a crosswalk at that location for safe pedestrian access across that driveway. And with that, I'd like to just turn it over to Brian from DSC to talk a little bit about the septic design.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Brian Urgation. I'm a professional engineer with BSC Group, and I've been brought into this project to design and permit the proposed septic system, which I'd like to talk to you a little bit about tonight. Excuse me. So the site is located in a DEP designated nitrogen-sensitive area, and we have a proposed design flow for 60 bedrooms, which is 6,600 gallons per day. And because of that flow rate, there are a couple different requirements. The Town of Harwich Board of Health Regulation 1.211 requires that any system with a design flow exceeding 2,000 gallons per day has to get permitted through the Board of Health. So we will be filing with the board very shortly for that. However, the other requirements are with Title V itself, the state's environmental code. Two requirements in particular. The first one is that any system with a design flow exceeding 2,000 gallons per day must use pressure distribution. And the second requirement, because this project is located in a nitrogen-sensitive area, we do need to provide a system with enhanced nitrogen removal. So the system that we have proposed is called an Amphitrone Plus system. And there's about 50 of these systems in use today on Cape Cod. There's several components to this system. It has we have an 8,000 gallon anoxic septic tank, mud well. We have the actual Amphitrone reactor, clear well plus filter, pump chamber, and a valve chamber. One of the main reasons that we chose this system is for its nutrient removal capabilities. The manufacturer of the system is F.R. Mahoney, and they provided us with a letter that says that this system will achieve an effluent concentration, total nitrogen, less than 10 milligrams per liter, which is a significant threshold because under the new Title V regulations, communities which don't have a wastewater permit in place have to provide what they've termed best available nitrogen reducing technology. And that requirement would be for a system to get down to an effluent below that threshold of 10 milligrams per liter. That's not required here. What is required here is that we get it down to an effluent concentration of 19 milligrams per liter. And that is what has, up until the regulations recently changed, that has been the standard for any alternative or innovative nitrogen reducing systems. So the system that we're proposing exceeds those, the performance of any other system that's out there right now, and it is the best available system that we could provide for the site in terms of nutrient removal. A couple other things I just wanted to mention. The system will also require a 10 by 10 foot shed, and the shed will house the blowers, the electric panels, pump controls, and the chemical feeds. There's always some questions about noise, odor, and yes, the blowers are the loudest thing. They're inside the shed. They also are equipped with a sound attenuation system, and carbon filters are used for odor control as well. The soil absorption system itself, so that what I just talked about is the treatment works, and that's where all the nutrient removal is achieved. But from there, the system is pumped to a distribution field. And because the size of the system, we have to have 2 fields. So we have 2 equal fields. They're using a precast concrete chamber, which will be below the ground. It can take vehicle loading. And this system, like I said, it is the best system that we could provide for this site. It otherwise complies with Title V and the Town of Harwich Board of Health regulations. That's just a brief overview, but I'd be happy to answer your questions later.
Good evening, and thank you to the board for having us on this rainy Tuesday. Kirsten Braun, traffic engineer for the project with Chapel Engineering. So I just quickly want to run through just a summary of the change of intensity in the uses here, which is what's shown on this slide. So we all know the Sunday school exists on site today. There are over 80 parking spaces, 10 employees. I believe they're open 7 days a week from noon to 10 p.m. The peak hours that they generally collect there are really any time after 2 o'clock to about 9:30 p.m. They collect the lunch crowd, the post-beach crowd, and then the evening crowd that receives ice cream after dinner. So it's a pretty long period of time that traffic is generally peaking because of the ice cream shop right now. They are seasonal though, so they only operate between mid-May and September. The proposed use proposes now 66 parking spaces. It's 28 residential units. The trips, as I'll show on the next slide, are generally more spread throughout the day. I provide a comparison, which wasn't included in the original traffic assessment, but we'll look at it on the next slide. So this slide here shows quickly, I know it's probably hard to read the numbers, but it shows kind of an hourly comparison between the 2 uses, the residential use and the existing Sunday school use. The residential trip generation was based on ITE data, which is generally industry standard when it comes to performing traffic assessments, and that is shown in sort of the leftmost column. As you can see, there's no real distinct peak. Trips are sort of spread throughout the day, kind of evenly. We do expect 190 total trips. That's entering and exiting traffic. Then the middle column here is actually, we were able to collect, well, first off, the traffic assessment compared the trip generation to a fast casual restaurant. There really isn't an IT trip generation code for an ice cream shop. And this area itself is generally kind of unique in that it's a vacation destination. So we know that the Sunday school generates a good amount of traffic and business today. So we kind of tried to figure out a way to provide a good comparison, since when the study was done, the Sunday school wasn't open. So we did actually collect parking lot occupancy data as well as transaction data from 3 weekdays from last July. We averaged the data of the 3 days, and that's what you see in this sort of middle column here. So as you can see, traffic kind of really significantly peaks sort of in the later half of the day, anytime after 6 o'clock on. It's a lot of traffic that goes in and out of the site. We know that the parking lot is generally full several hours of the day, and it's tough to get in there as is to get a parking spot, even with those 82 spaces. So then you see in the third column, the far right column, the difference in traffic. So the red numbers are when we expect decreases in traffic. And as you see throughout the whole day, we expect, about 600 fewer trips. Again, those are entering and exiting volumes to the site. Also, we did take a look at Mass DOT traffic data in the area just to see when Route 28 peaks specifically in the summer. Route 28 does peak traffic-wise pretty consistently throughout the day, probably from noon to 7 o'clock. There are a heavy volume of traffic out there during the summer peak periods. So as you can see here in the table, that's also when the Sunday school peaks. So we do expect some sort of traffic improvement from this change in use. And again, this data too from the Sunday school from last year was taken on a weekday. The weekends are obviously much busier. So we do expect, this is kind of a conservative assessment, if you will, for the decrease in traffic. Also, when looking at the increases without even taking into account the credit for the existing Sunday school, these increases are rather minimal, and as VHB concurred, they don't require, based on Mass DOT requirements for traffic impact assessments, it doesn't require a full study. And when I say full study, I mean analyzing adjacent intersections. And VHB did concur with that in their peer review. Then moving on to the peer review from VHB, the big one is obviously the minimum site distances. We did provide a site distance plan. I'll make sure that the town and VHB did actually in fact receive that. But what we showed on the plan is that we do meet the minimum site distance requirements. Those requirements are based on the adjacent speed of traffic, which we counted data in March, so it was when traffic volumes were somewhat lower, so speeds were probably in turn higher, but it was 37 miles per hour in either direction. We do meet the minimum site distance requirements, and it's shown on the plan, and we're also going to make sure, based on those site triangles that are shown, that any landscaping, signs, and fencing is either less than 2 feet in height or located outside of the site distance triangles. And then I think lastly, Michael actually kind of summarized most of the peer review, but the last big item was coordination with Mass DOT. We will be submitting a highway access permit, and as part of that process, VHB is going to review the whole traffic study, the site distance, and the design of the driveways. The driveway, as they are shown, are designed to those Mass DOT requirements, which is that the driveway be a maximum of 24 feet in width with 30-foot corner radii, which is why the driveway looks a little bit wider at its intersection with 28. But ultimately, VHB did concur with our findings of the study. Residential uses are kind of rather minimal traffic impactors. We are going to see a significant decrease in traffic here, particularly during the summer months, as shown in this table. And then any increases outside of the summer months are expected to be minimal when traffic on Route 28 is much less, so they should be able to absorb that traffic quite easily without really any sort of notice there. And with that, I'll pass it off to Russ to discuss landscaping and architecture.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the board. My name is Russell Dion. I'm a professional architect in Massachusetts for 40 years. I'm also a partner at Campanelli. So when our landscape architect is away, but I will go over some of the changes that we've made since our last meeting. As a result of many conversations with several of the immediate abutters along the Bank Street side of the project, we have incorporated 13 to 14 green giant arborvitaes, which are shown here in the darker circles. And we are planning on the green giant arborvitaes to go in on day one for a minimum height of 20 feet, in some cases 22, depending what we can procure in the market. We have also, next slide please. Also in the rear of the property is the rental property here, and is a very mature tree here, but we've also proposed 2 giant arborvitaes down at this end of the site to help obstruct any views and any headlight traffic that could overflow from parking going in and out. Could you go back one slide, please? The other thing we've done, Garrett showed earlier here, is some underground storage and drainage systems. We've coordinated all our plantings to coordinate with all the structures, manholes, pipelines, and underground structures, which is pointed out in the staff report and with the peer review. We've also, if you could go to the next slide, please. We've added this is just further detail. Okay, stay right there, please. This column here is a confirmation of the plant list issued by the Harwich Conservation Commission. All of our plants comply and are included in the plant list that Harwich endorses. The green arborvitae giants are not in that list, but they're very hardy down the Cape. They're very well used for screenings in multiple locations. Next slide, please. And this is just a further detail of the giant arborvitaes clustered with a fence and alternated patterns to create screening. One thing about the giant arborvitaes that we plan to do would be we would plant these arborvitaes. If you would stay on this slide, please. These arborvitaes are outside of the construction zone. They are as adjacent to the property to create the most impact to the abutters. We would propose planting those trees in the early onset of construction, and they would have a year growth, perhaps a year and a half of growth prior to occupying the project. Next slide, please. Okay, we'll move a little bit to site lighting. We talked about this a little bit at our last presentation. Through discussions with our abutters, our original design as submitted in our original application complied with dark sky compliancy and also through a photometric study, no light spill over the property line. We were able to achieve that with a 14-foot pole, as you see here, and we're proposing a minimum fence of 6 feet around most of the property. In a few cases, we're proposing 8, but there's still sight lines that come over that fence and can see that light fixture, even though it's a compliant and appropriate light fixture. So we've studied it to put pathway bollards, and driveway bollards, and walkway bollards, which would spread the light over all the walking and driving surfaces. Next slide, please. That bollard would be at 36 to 42 inches above ground, and it would be 3 to 4 feet below the top of the fence. These are some photometric studies that were submitted to the board showing the various lights. We still maintain a 14-foot pole at the site entrance, just for extra visual safety. And then as you proceed down through the parking into the submerged parking structure, over here by the handicap space, and we've noted with the board, we will study if we can put another bollard there. But we sort of direct people down to the rear parking, which is majority of that parking is visitor parking, down into the back, as shown here, and it's all dark sky compliant. Next slide, please. These are just more models that the photometric engineer has provided. The specifications were also issued to the board for the light fixtures along the pathways, the single 14-foot light fixture, as well as the light fixtures that will be attached to entranceways and exits and balconies of the building. Okay. And this is the photometric study. It's a little hard to see, but it gives all the specs. It gives the radius and the foot candles, and it goes down the side of the building and along the back parking lot. So that's for additional review. Next slide, please. Okay, if you could just back up for a moment. So one of the things we've done for tonight is, at the request of the board, there was a request for a 3D model. We were able to put together a 3D animation. We really focused this animation to provide a lot of architectural detail to the building, so you can see how the building sets back, how the various surfaces have different articulating roof heights, and also how the building sits into the local context. So this film is about a minute and a half. We'll just play it. And if the board has a request to play the film later, we can do that as well. Thank you. Sure. Nick, could you play the 3D model again?
Pause that for a second. Thing going on here is a 69 aspect ratio in this monitor and a 4:5 aspect ratio here. And you have about twice the verticality in this. You're not missing anything. They've got a 16:9 aspect ratio on one monitor and a 4:5 ratio aspect ratio on the other. So what you're seeing is different from what we're seeing. What we're seeing is congruent with what their plans are. I want to make sure you guys see what their plans look like instead of what's seeing what. So can that be adjusted with this particular projector? I don't know if that's a projector adjustment. means that instead of there being a distortion in the verticality of the images, it look, it just doesn't look right if you put something through a different ratio. It was the way it's supposed to be designed to be seen. Let's watch this twice for you all so you can see what it looks like, where the way the plans have been submitted, not as the way it's been distorted by a lens. Okay? Watching this screen here.
It's worse than the first time. I can't see what's. So, Mr. Chairman, we certainly will work on the aspect ratios prior to the next hearing and show it again. And we'll certainly show it on your equipment and look at that an hour or two before to make sure that the visual aspect is correct.
Well, I think the point of the matter is for the material that you submitted, and I want to give as an example this artist rendering here. If you look at what's submitted to the board versus what's being projected, there's a considerable optical distortion, and I just want to make sure that you guys see what we're seeing here. And then we get to see what they intend. That's what I want. So we'll suspend the modeling to this point and continue with the presentation. Thank you for your patience. Sorry, we're just trying to get this right. I know you've got more to go.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. So we'll go back to the presentation that we were using before. Do you want the television facing the board again? Would you like the TV flip?
We'll use this one time being, unless you can switch, can you just flip it? Yeah. Then we'll go with this.
Okay. I think he's saying just go. Okay. So Nick, if you could go back to the elevation slides, please. Okay, that's perfect. Thank you. So we've taken the four elevations around the building, and we've made some roof height changes and some sidewall height changes. The top illustration is the elevation as it was submitted in the original package, which shows the two-story height at 29.3, the three-story height in the middle at 39.6, and then the two-story height on the other side at 29.3. Those heights and roofs have been lowered. The two-story height is lowered by 4 feet to 25.2. The piece in the middle of the building has been lowered by 2'6" to 37, and that's to the peak of the roof line. The sidewall has been lowered another 2'6" as well, and then the two-story section to the west has been lowered from 29.3 to 25.2, 4 feet. The red, could you stand that slide? The red shows the dropping of the roof across the Main Street elevation, and the orange shows the dropping of the siding and the eave. A lot of times, when you see a building, you visually see the wall of the building much more than the receding roof line. In this case, the wall has been lowered by 2'6" across the entire facade. Next slide. This is the side elevation, which would face towards Embers. This is the Main Street side of the building. This is the original facade that was submitted with the application. These are the changes. We've gone from 29.3 to 25.2 at the two-story piece of the building, In the rear of the building, we have lowered the sidewall significantly. We've lowered the sidewall 6'6", which is a half a story, which you see here in the orange. We've employed some standard sort of shed dormer. Some people call them dustpan type of dormers. We've avoided the gables on these dormers to keep the wall to a lesser of a scale. And we dropped the roof across the entire back of the building by slightly over 5 feet, as you can see here in the revised elevation submitted with the new packet. Next slide, please. This is the rear of the building as it faces. This elevation isn't seen by any street. There's a few neighbors on the Bank Street side that will see this elevation, and again, this elevation is dropped 5 feet from the 39.6 to the 34, and you can see the domed roof changes here as well as the sidewall. And then these are the changes that you've seen at the front of the building in the earlier slide, and then the two-story piece at the other end is dropped by 4 feet. Next slide, please. And this is the two-story elevation which faces the driveway, originally at 29.3. The new elevation is at 25.2, a drop of 4 feet. The building in the back, again, not seen at the street. This is the piece that sets back. This is the sloping driveway to the underground parking facility. And this elevation is dropped from 39 feet 6 inches to 34 feet 5 inches 5 feet 1. You can see the color rendition here. Okay, next slide, please. So this is the slide that you just saw in the 3D animation. This is a view on Main Street looking west. Next slide, please. This is a view on Main Street looking east. You can see the existing tree line here today and how the building scales and fits behind that tree line. Next slide, please. This is the original design here with the vegetation. This is the revised design showing the reduction of roof height. And these are where we're proposing, this is existing vegetation. Here and here are some of the giant green arborvitaes between the 20 and 22 foot caliber that will go in on day one that will provide some screening to the facade. This is from the street. As one moves into the property, the trees only appear larger because the scale of the viewer to the tree becomes larger. Next slide, please. This is just another view without the lines on it. Okay, this is from the captain's quarters, bed and breakfast here. This is their driveway. This is the original design. This is the revised design showing the roof line after it was reduced by 5 foot 1 inches. These are some of the giant, oops, can you stay on that slide, please? These are some of the giant green arborvitaes that are being proposed. This is existing vegetation. And we can work with the detailing of those arborvitaes. If there needs to be one or two more, that's certainly fine. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is just an enlargement of the slide you just saw of taking the graphic lines off. And I think that's in your packets. And that's the summary of the changes to the elevations of the building. I'll go back to you.
Thank you. We're asking for 2 special permits, the multifamily special permit and also the site plan review special permit. I'll go over the multifamily special permit first. We believe this project clearly meets all of the required criteria for a multifamily use special permit. The rooms are adequately sized. It's conforming, properly designed septic system. The parking and landscaping are appropriate for this project. And there's a requirement that all entrances have overhangs, and that is something, a requirement that we've met. In addition to these very specific requirements, can you all hear me? No. Okay, here we go. In addition to all these specific requirements, we also have to meet the site plan review special permit requirements for the multifamily permit. The use, multifamily, is an allowed use by special permit in both the RL and the CV zoning districts. The structure is purposely sited in the CV district where the more densely developed properties are, or the more densely developed portion of the property. Under a site plan review special permit, there are 4 findings that you all see. That the project as proposed and developed is not adverse to the neighborhood, that the site is appropriate for the use as developed, that no nuisances or serious hazards related to pedestrians or automobiles are created, and as designed, it operates more as it should. You believe that as developed, or we know, as developed, it conforms to setbacks, to height, coverage, screening, and parking numbers. We've had confirmation from Christine tonight that our lighting is conforming. No ZBA relief is needed. The height here is no longer at the maximum allowed, close to the 40 feet. We've made significant changes in this plan and brought the majority of the project to well under 30 feet. The majority of the project is at a lower level at 20 feet. Much of the project is at a lower level at 25. There's a small portion of the project that is 37 feet. The first finding you all would make is that it's not adverse to the neighborhood. We believe that a project designed for an allowed use in a way that fits within the dimensional requirements of the zoning bylaw, that is properly screened and whose parking exceeds what is required, is not adverse to the neighborhood. But adverse is not defined by the bylaw. Merriam-Webster defines adverse as hostile, causing harm. It can imply a more severe or impactful outcome. An example is an adverse verdict, which is a verdict that's directly opposed to one's legal interest, or an adverse reaction, such as to a medicine that causes negative physical symptoms. A change in use is not adverse. We believe, and I think it's undeniable, that the use we are proposing, a 28-unit residential condominium use for ownership, is a use that is less intensive in terms of traffic and in terms of noise than the current seasonal use as Sunday school. The peak times of traffic in the peak season are clearly less than what the proposed project will generate. The project will make the parking in terms of buffers conforming. At present, the buffers for the parking, there are some parking spaces that are 3.5 feet away from neighbors' property lines, both on the northern part and the western part towards Denver. There are some spots that are as close as 5 feet away. This project will create conforming buffers. It will provide fencing around the property and tremendous landscaping around the property at the 10 feet which is required. The up-to-date septic and stormwater treatment systems are also not going to show an improvement, but these are improvements over the current conditions. There are also expected to be increased tax revenues based on the current tax revenues for Sunday school. A net increase of over $190,000 is a conservative estimate. The site is an appropriate location for the use as developed. The multifamily use, as I've said, is allowed in both of these districts. And the bylaw, which was passed in 2020, makes no distinction or preference among the types of multifamily use. The plain language of this bylaw is important. Whether there were statements made by a resident of the town, Richard Waystack, at the last meeting. He said any housing is important, whether it be rental, whether it be market rate, whether it be affordable, whether it be any source at all. This is a use that encourages walkable living close to the village center. It provides customers who can walk to and not create additional parking burdens on the village stores and restaurants. The mixed use to multifamily use is the transition from the center of the village district out towards the ends of the commercial district. And you'll see this here in the following slide. There are larger or comparable multifamily uses already in context in the neighborhood. I'd like now to show you this Melrose comparison. This is a revised slide. This slide was provided at the last meeting, and we revised it based on research we've done. I've tried to find the site plans for the Melrose. Those don't exist in Town Hall, but what I could find was because it's a 1995 decision. So what I did find was a copy of the zoning decision. So I changed the footprint of the Melrose to reflect what was shown in the zoning decision, which is 29,025 square feet. And so if you look at the top, this coloring is a little off, but over on the left, that represents the footprint of the proposed development. It's 29,900 in gross floor area. The middle represents the footprint of the Melrose, which is the 29,025. And on the right, you see the footprint of 606, the proposed project, over the Melrose. The Melrose is 25% larger in terms of footprint. I don't have this on the slide, but I'll tell you, in terms of gross floor area above ground, 606 is 3 floors in all. The third floor is smaller than the second floor and the first floor. But in terms of gross floor area above ground, there's about 1,300 square feet in difference between the Melrose and between 606 as proposed. Going down to the bottom, this is revised to show the current elevation for 606. And in the back, the gray area is the facade of the Melrose. You'll see that the proposed development length on the Main Street facade is 177 feet. The Melrose's facade is 208 feet. It's about 15% longer. And what's really important here is to take a look at those roof lines. And this is where you can see that, as proposed, there's a small section of the front facade that's at that higher 37 feet, which is again lower than the 40 that's allowed. The two sides are at 25.2 on either side. That's almost 5 feet lower than the Melrose. Honestly, I don't think you could see that well from the automated model. This really shows it. It's much smaller in the vast majority. About 70% of the front facade is at the 25.2 feet versus the 37 feet. Next slide. I think, actually, could you go to the slide 36? We'll skip over that one. Thank you. I kind of dug into the Melrose decision, and so I just wanted to flag this. The Melrose decision was for variance. It was actually for 12 variances. We were asking for special permits. It was a long time ago, and the zoning law was different. Multifamily use wasn't allowed at the time, and so, but some of the things were similar, and I think some of the thought process of that were, I know you don't have to follow that process, but I think it's instructive. These are some of the findings, and some of them I put quotes, some are literally taken from the decision. So the Melrose had 12 variances for use, setback, height of a cupola. I think it was about a 5-foot high cupola, and parking. One of the findings they had was the property was in a larger area than many parcels nearby and is within both the RL and CB zoning districts, just like this project. The property abuts both commercial and residential use properties, just like this project. The parking area drainage from septic systems were designed to prevent impact on land and abutting properties. They were probably at what you needed to do at that time. We're exceeding what needs to happen in our more strict times today. Here's a quote. The proposed site is one of the very few of this size within easy walking distance to Harwich Village. That's something that over time in planning, trying to make a walkable village, trying to emphasize that, trying to look at the form rather than the use of a property, that's something that is really important today. And this project, having people be able to walk, it's more denser living, but having people be able to walk, not use their cars, and enjoy the village center, that's a clear focus of the Campanelli project. The proposed use will provide a needed form of housing. Back to all kinds of housing or needed forms of housing. And I know that you have in your records a letter from Peggy Crispo, who is a resident of a local town, wanted to downsize, wanted to be in an area like this where she won't have maintenance and she'll be able to walk to the village center. And she'll be in a home that's roughly a house-sized home in an area where she won't have to do maintenance. So this is a need. There are many different needs, and we acknowledge that in this area. Campanelli, as an aside, is doing a 40B project very close by in Dennisport. But this is a project that fits this area. Could you go back to that zoning slide? I need you to. Thank you. So this shows just that transition, and honestly, I didn't highlight all of the condominium or mixed-use projects that are in this area, but I flagged a few. So Bank Street is really a divider. On the right-hand side of Bank Street, 77 and as proposed 606 and 601 are all purely condominium projects. To the left or to the west of Bank Street, it's a combination of projects. As you can see that 589 is a mixed-use project. 584 is a condominium project. The new project at 575, the Miller project, will be a mixed-use project. 571, I believe, is mixed-use or part of that. Roots at 557 is a mixed-use residential project. 558 is a condominium project. Having the use become more like residential use as it gets closer to the residential area, which Snowden Road is the boundary of that, we think is important, and it makes this fit and be an appropriate use at this site. No nuisance or serious hazards to vehicles or pedestrians. The traffic assessment and peer review confirmed that changes in use and traffic impact will not be enough to trigger a study, and the proposed conditions meet required standards. I wanted to pull out a quote from the traffic assessment to give you an idea of, when we talked about actual traffic, Sunday school traffic, and also the traffic assessment traffic. And so this is for the traffic assessment traffic, not our chart about actual use of Sunday school. So, put on my glasses. This is from page 9, traffic increases. Based on the traffic generation and distribution patterns, 8 to 11 additional vehicles are expected on Main Street west of the site, representing 1 additional vehicle every 5.5 to 7.5 minutes during peak hours. East of the site on Main Street, 3 additional vehicles are expected during peak hours, representing 1 additional vehicle every 20 minutes. These increases are minimal and well within the daily fluctuation of traffic. Furthermore, smaller increases in traffic are expected during all other hours of the day. In terms of accommodations, we've mentioned that we're going to work with Mass DOT to make sure, best of our ability, there's a crosswalk at the Ember entrance. There's also an emphasis with this development to have bike storage inside. That was a question. And bike storage outside, or permanent bike storage inside, and temporary bike storage outside. In terms of limiting potential sources of noise, through discussions with the community members, there was a request for no early morning trash pickup, a quiet garage door, and an emphasis on making sure that the decks with the new shed, that the Harwich noise bylaw will be followed. And that's something that is important to the quiet use and enjoyment of the residents of the condominium as well. And so I think that's a common interest that will certainly be upheld. I also want to mention that there are by right alternate uses, such as a restaurant use, that could be proposed for this area. We believe that a use such as a restaurant could potentially have more noise, more traffic, and be more disruptive than this 28-unit condominium development. And we'll be right through. There needs to be a finding that there's adequate facilities and the property will operate smoothly. The biggest point we'd like to make here is that we know that parking is at a premium in the village, and so consciously, on purpose, we've tried to develop this property in a way so that there is enough parking for visitors and for residents there. Been provisions made for deliveries, move-ins and move-outs, and trash and recycling. The limitations on short-term rentals truly they're beneficial in many ways, but I think not having a constant flow in and out from an Airbnb type use will make this development run more smoothly. Can we go to 40, and get outreach to neighbors and responses by the applicant? And so we want to make sure that, to the extent possible, we've reached out to neighbors and we have listened and tried to make changes where we could make changes. On May 1st, we hosted a community meeting. Between May 1st and June 10th, members of the Campanelli team had in-person meetings with almost every immediate abutter. At the last meeting, when we heard that some people had not been reached out to, we made a constant effort to do that as well. I know that there's even been a meeting today. As a result of those discussions and discussions in-house, The design is meaningfully changed, both in the design of the structure and how it will operate. As I've said, limiting the short-term rentals is an important and meaningful change. It's one that we've heard about from talking with neighbors, that people had that concern that it would be an Airbnb type use. Reducing the height and bulk of the structure over 5 feet from 39.6 to 34.5, over 4 feet on the front east and west facades, and the east-facing side facade is important. And we've made the changes I've already mentioned in terms of screening, lighting, and noise. I'd like to close by emphasizing the fact that we've met the standards for the multifamily use and met the standards for a site plan review with quotes from members of the community who spoke at the last meeting. Richard Waystack, the problem is there's no supply of properties, so little inventory, and so many clients who want exactly what you all have, that beautiful place in Harwich Port. So the lack of supply creates tremendous price increases, which cause issues for the available housing, workforce housing, and affordable housing. We need housing at all levels. Peter Gorey, we're talking about zoning that exists. When people buy property, zoning matters. The bylaw doesn't show a preference for affordable housing, market rate housing on its face. Have to go by what the bylaw says and work to change it if you want to direct community development differently. We believe that we've shown that the site, as proposed, is not adverse to the neighborhood. It's appropriate for the site. It's designed in a way that should function well, and it creates no nuisances or serious hazards to pedestrians or vehicles. We're really interested in your comments. We're all here to answer your questions. We know there may be more questions as time goes on, but we're ready to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Very good, thank you so much. Let us start with questions and comments from the board, please. Mary, do you want to start with?
Sure. So, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for the height reduction. I think that was certainly makes a difference when it comes to looking at the bulk and just comparing it to the Melrose. I think was helpful to me, at least, because you can really see that it's only that center portion of the building that's really going to be at the similar height, and it's only really those two peak windows. So I appreciated that. I'm also appreciative that you have continued to reach out to the neighbors. I think that is going to be important. As far as the septic, obviously we have nothing to do with the septic. However, it's part of the site plan. So from a permitting perspective, what do you think your timeline is on your Board of Health approvals that you're going to need to go through for that? Any idea?
I would like Brian to talk to that directly.
Sure.
Our plan is to file by the end of the week, and I'm not sure what the next available meeting date is, but it will be within 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
So, just as a rider to that question, did I hear you said that there are only 50 of these units, these cleansing units, that are in use?
That's actually a good number, yes.
It is? Because I was going to say,
there's so many different...
In the Commonwealth, or?
No,
in
that's
North
on
America?
That's on Cape Cod.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I wasn't clear.
So,
That's a good amount because there's a whole bunch of proprietary systems that are available for use. So that's actually a pretty good number.
okay, so is this, all right, well, that's good.
Point of order.
So I guess my last would just be that you know, a lot of these outreach things, if we get to a point where we're actually voting on this, I would think these would certainly be conditions that we would expect to
Expect those conditions.
into a decision, if and when we get to that stage. So I just wanted to point that out. Good.
Through the chair,
Yes.
just, I'm noticing there's a second camera in the back of the auditorium. I just want to make sure that they're not filming as well.
I think that's the broadcast camera.
Okay.
Bill? No?
This camera?
Yeah.
I don't know.
The camera next.
Oh, the second one next. What's going on here? Just out of curiosity.
We're with 7 News. We don't have to use any of the meeting card if we're not allowed to.
You're with 7 News?
Yeah.
At the beginning of this meeting, I said if anybody wanted to record it, they should stand up and announce it to me, and so we could get approval on the board.
Right, we weren't present for that part.
That is correct. We're not present for that, so you are not permitted to use that.
Okay, we won't.
Sorry. Do we have, let's see, Alan, do you have questions?
No, not at this time. I think Mary addressed some of the concerns I had about the height and then the conditions that we were talking about as far as. Sorry. It's wireless, so I'll just hold it close to me. And some of the things as far as the outreach, those would be put in as conditions, if it got to a vote.
Annie, did you have? No. Yes. Ann?
Okay, I have a few questions related to the safety and the traffic, and I just want to go back to this point of the adjacent intersection. Okay, we talked about no problems, and I had some of this discussion with VHB, but the intersection of 28 Freeman and Snowing is still listed as one of the top 5 crash clusters on the Mass DOT. Okay, and from that report, just to put some context and some more data in, Route 28 has 8,700 vehicles per day and 9,700 on a Saturday. That's from the Safety Council report. I also want to note that as we are meeting, the Safety Council for Harwich is meeting, and on their agenda is to look at this Route 28 corridor. So it is of great concern. I also, as a public citizen, attended the public meeting that you had here, and I just want to clarify something from that related again to traffic studies, okay? So you just discussed that you took a traffic study last July, is that correct?
We collected transaction data from the Sunday school from last July. We took 3 weekdays and also looked at the parking occupancy during those days. And we were able to quantify from that data a general number of trips associated with the Sunday school.
Okay, so an adjacent question to that was, when was this project first imagined then, if you're taking traffic data last July?
It wasn't traffic data, that's why in the original traffic assessment, we compared to another IT and land use code. Just because when we did the study back in February, the Sunday school was closed, so we couldn't collect actual count data at the site driveway as we performed the traffic assessment. So what we were able to do was to dig into, it's not traffic count data, it's transactional data.
So it's a guess.
Well, it's a hard number from the transactional data, and we all.
Can we simplify this for the public?
Yes.
Because traffic studies and all this stuff gets very gobbledygook very quickly. So how did you get this traffic data last July?
The transactional data was pulled from the records for the store sales.
So so to some degree it was a guess, is that correct?
Yes, and it was an
That's
estimate.
fine, but it was a guess, okay? I want to ask one more question about the height. So I agree with Mary that that's a good outcome to bring the building down. But what changes inside happened? Why could you all of a sudden bring it down? What was your intention?
I'll speak to that.
Okay.
We changed the vertical ceiling height of the floors from the first to second floor to third floor, and the third floor units. So the ceiling heights ranged originally from 9'6" to 10 feet within the units, depending on which spaces. Now the maximum ceiling height is 9 feet. And we also looked at the technical space that we needed between the interstitial space to put HVAC equipment in. Originally, we felt we needed to have a floor-to-floor height of 11'6", and we confirmed we can put all the HVAC equipment and ducts in at 10'8". So that's the two areas that we looked at to achieve those savings on height.
And what was your intention? Was this to make it more palatable to the neighborhood, or as a project? I mean, it's welcome to happen. I just want to know kind of why you did it.
Well, we've met with the neighbors. We've had a meeting here with a very similar crowd. We've talked to our direct abutters. We've listened to the testimony in the first meeting. We've listened to some of the testimony from the planning board, and we felt it was absolutely the right thing to do.
Okay.
Thank you. Harry, do you have any questions?
Just to keep going with the same height issue, it seems like the numbers don't work. It looks like you picked up from 39.6 to 37, so that's 2 feet 6 inches, 3 inches. But when you were running down the space between the floors, it seemed like it didn't come to 30 inches.
They're not additive that way. So what we can provide the board, if you would like, is a wall section. When you build a roof, okay, it has a slope to it. Our roof doesn't go to a peak and then fall down the other side of the building. It goes down, and we have a mechanical shelf within the roof. So this ridge line here at the peak can be manipulated to a shallower slope and reduce the slope as well.
Okay, that would make sense. Kind of along the same lines, how much are you going to have to excavate below existing grade to accommodate for underground parking?
On a cubic yardage?
Height.
So today the building is planned, the first floor elevation is planned at 16, and the elevation of the garage is 11 feet below that, so it would be 5 feet, an elevation of 5 feet.
So the height of the overhead height of the garage will be 11 feet, are you saying?
No, the delta between the first floor finish and the garage finish will be 11 feet. The clear height in the garage will only be 7'9" to 8 feet.
Okay, so how far will you have to excavate below existing grade to achieve that?
10 feet. Roughly, the average grade is between 15 and 15.3.
Okay, so I have no idea the answer to this question. Where is the water table in that neighborhood?
It's below 5 feet. We've done preliminary testing, which is not with the geotech engineer. We have the geotech engineer scheduled to do drilling within the next couple of weeks. We've been watching the excavation across the street with the 575 project very intensively. They did not hit water at their slab elevation, which is similar to ours. They did hit water in the trenching for their foundations. Okay? Our water that we hit in the non-geotechnical drilling was at 3 feet, 2 feet below the proposed elevation of our garage. Now, our engineering science will go down and do a 30-foot boring, look at high water table as well as seasonal water table, and make an appropriate analysis with a professional engineer.
You're not here for that, but it looks to me, no engineer, it looks to me like there's going to be a problem there somewhere down the line. I think 2 more things and I'm done. I saw your
narrative on the wider driveway width. It's like a half a foot, 6/10 of a foot or something above the maximum requirement of 50 feet. Well, I mean, you have to, it says in the bylaws that you have to come in and provide an explanation to this board as to why you're 6/10 of a foot wider than what the code requires. I don't think I really got the explanation. I got the facts that you were, and that, you know, that needed to be dealt with, but I didn't hear why.
Certainly. So Mass DOT has a minimum 30-foot radii standard, and just as how it's measured at the right-of-way line the measurement is taken, it's strictly driven off of the radii required by Mass DOT.
All right, and the other thing that I didn't hear any discussion of, and I might have just missed it, was open space. Is that, I think you have a requirement, I don't remember how specific it is in the town code, but I think it's something that needs to be addressed.
So the project complies in terms of lot coverage, and the way it's presented in the zoning table is a little deceiving because the way it's written in the bylaw is you have to deduct for parking underneath the structure. So the actual lot coverage it's within the zoning compliance of 72% as presented in the table, but the physical number is much lower than 72%. It's much closer to around 57, 58%.
I don't think they consider parking open space.
It's not considered, so the 72% number is sort of inflated, just because the denominator is not the total lot area. We're deducting, I believe, 13,000 square feet from our lot area to account for underground parking. So in theory, our calculations for lot coverage are really based off the lot size of 63,226 square feet, as the lot whole is actually 76,226 square feet. So we are actually, there's more open space than what's represented in the 72% number.
If I could add to that, in terms of site coverage, I think what my colleague's trying to say is that the 56 and the 72 are coming off of different lot sizes. And so if you actually look at what the existing site coverage is for Sunday school, this proposal is about 2,500 square feet more in site coverage. And in terms of open area, there is a discretionary requirement under the multifamily bylaw. I think I'm not sure it fits here because I think it's more, my thought is it's more for an affordable type housing development, but we do need it with the areas that are open, on the north and west sides, and we also have open patio deck or roof decks, 2 of those on the site that we suggest would count towards that.
Thank you.
I believe.
So I want to thank you, Harry, for answering the questions or asking the questions that I was going to ask, primarily about the basement, and thank you also for getting into the septic. I wanted to get more clarification on rental durations. I mean, I just, we kind of like skidded past that. So
Certainly, that was at the very end of the night.
Yeah, so could you review that for us?
Certainly. The intent is to avoid having week-to-week Airbnb rentals.
Right.
And so I think the condition needs to be drafted, but it would be something to the effect of having a limit of rentals that is no less than 2 months. And I don't want to get over my skis in terms terms of making sure that I'm talking about
This is one of these conditions that
Right.
you're going to want to tack on.
Absolutely.
Robert DeMarco for the record. The intent of what I spoke to at the last meeting, and I appreciate the opportunity to repeat it, is that as we deed over the units and sell them, we would put a deed restriction on the unit where there can be no more than 2 rentals a year, and any of those rentals can't be for less than 2 months. So in other words, someone would need to rent it for the entire season, the 2-month season. And if someone who bought a unit wanted to, rent it for another 2 months in the winter or something, they could do so. But so you can't, nothing less than 2 months would be permissible.
Just to follow up on that, that's a deed restriction, correct?
That's the idea.
That's the idea, which is then enforced by your HOA, kind of, is that correct?
Agree with that?
Pardon?
I would agree with that.
Okay, I want to make it clear to the public that the town of Harwich doesn't enforce this. We don't have people then who can go and report whether that actually happens or not. This is then left up to a yet-to-be-formed HOA. We ran into this problem when we were working on the ADUs and trying to do the same thing about rental restrictions. And it feels legal, but it's almost impossible to monitor and enforce. I just want to make that clear.
Just as a small follow-up on that, I would still say that a deed restriction is a strong restriction. It's not, it's certainly stronger than HOA docs or condo docs that could be changed at a later time.
It's
So,
something, yeah.
but it's still stronger than, I would even argue that it's stronger than a restriction that we could put on a condition for a special permit. So, just for.
Very good. All right, if that's it from the board, then I would like to invite the public. As usual, our routine is to address the board from the microphone at the stage here, head of the stage. Just give us your name and address, and we'll ask to we don't want to have a parliamentarian come in and the stopwatch, but we'd like to keep this crisp and get full room and get all your views out. So thank you.
My name is Mary Noonan, address 76 West Tupelo, Harwich. My uncle purchased the house. His name was James Noonan in 1981, so we've been residents here for a little over 40 years. I find many of the points very difficult to take, specifically adverse effects to the neighborhood. I find the height of the structure, the monstrosity, I would argue, of the structure completely out of tune with the rest of the town. I and many others come here every summer. I and many others come here every summer for the charming, quaint, calming nature of the downtown. This building will completely ruin that in my mind. I have no desire to walk downtown, to walk by a condominium. So you keep using the term the walkable, I find it kind of offensive because there's no need to walk when I'm walking past a condominium that looks so out of place. Again, it doesn't fit with the nature of the town. I understand that the last 2 hours you've been going through all the different things that the project meets, the various requirements, etc. And I would say it misses by a long shot the main one, which is it fitting with the Cape Cod nature of Harwichport? And for me, that's a huge no. I can't get this down, I hope. Here. Okay, there you go. Thank you. Yep. My name is Pamela Groswald. I'm a native of Harwichport. I currently reside at 601 Route 28, the Melrose. There's been a lot said about the Melrose tonight, but I find it very interesting that
When I signed in as an abutter, I expected to hear from someone. I never did. I am a trustee at the Melrose, and we are very concerned about the size and the density of this project. We are also concerned that our building is being used as a comparison with incorrect information. The Melrose does not, under any circumstances, have 3 floors of living. We have 2 floors. The 3rd floor is a mansard roof with doghouse dormers. That is purely for aesthetics. There's no living up there. The building is longer. The reason the building is longer is because there's a very large U-shaped space in the middle that is outdoor green space. It's a courtyard. We do have a whole side yard that we leave untouched because that's open green space. We have garages and we also have a parking lot. We're aware of the problems with parking, but as does the entire Board of Trustees and the majority of the people at the Melrose that I personally had spoken to, that we're being compared, and you're using the wrong language, the wrong facts and figures. You've never knocked on the door. I signed in the first meeting and asked, I offered, I said, come over, I'll walk you through the building, you can see for yourselves what's there. And nobody at that building has heard anything from any of you. We are direct abutters. So, the
Well, thank you
density,
very much.
but this also affects the density and the noise. If you're going to have 3rd floor rooftop living, outdoor living, that's going to be noisy. And we're to the south, so it's not going to affect us as much as Belmont, but it certainly is going to affect the other neighbors around you. And you don't have any open space, any common space. We have a large dining room, we have a solarium, we have a library, we have lots of gathering spaces. We have an exercise room, and we have a solarium. So you're taking what you consider to be our square footage, and you're just cramming more people into it. So please do not compare us, because you're not comparing.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Oswald. Thank you. I'm Brian Irvin. I live at 626 Route 28, corner of Freeman and 28. I concur, you have the right to do this, but is it right? You can go anywhere in the country, ask somebody what a Cape Cod house looks like, and they can tell you. If you took this project and plopped it anywhere in the country, I suggest it wouldn't elicit somebody saying this is Cape Cod. This doesn't belong here.
We have been in Harwich since 1990, not quite as long as some of the other speakers, but I'd like to ask the board if they would consider referring a project of this magnitude that will have a direct impact on Harwichport, downtown Harwichport, as well as the surrounding neighborhoods, to the Cape Cod Commission for DRI review. Thank you.
Good evening, Duncan and planning board. I spoke at the last meeting in opposition to the plan. A lot of people approached me afterwards and said, what can I do? I said, you can sign a note that says I'm in opposition to it. So I'm going to present to you 11 pages with about 150 signatures. Most of them are not here tonight. And incidentally, there's 20 signatures plus from the Melrose. In my opinion, the reduction of size of a couple of feet here and there doesn't change things. It's still a monster. It's out of character. It doesn't belong in Harwich. It's detrimental to the neighborhood, adverse, whatever you want to call it. There's the proximity to the street is what really is the problem, and lack of green space. Here you go.
Thanks, Jim Budd. For the record, Jim Hudson, still on Davis?
No, I'm on Bridgeport Drive.
Bridgeport, okay.
Thanks.
My bad.
Paul Butler, 15 Downs Road. I did some research before coming tonight, and the Kim Bailey Company is world class. Anyone that does research on this company will find they will do the right thing. They're already making minor modifications for the community, actually major modifications for the community and the board, and the feedback that's been said tonight and prior. As a right, many years ago, maybe it was 5, maybe it was 10, the town adopted bylaws and height restrictions. They're below the height restrictions. The community came back and said, please make it lower. They presented a permit with what the zoning allows. They've now drastically reduced that. And all defense to the Melrose people. Melrose roof has more of a peak, so the height is just as high. And they lowered their roof to bring it the same level. So I'm here tonight to say, I did my research. This is a great property. I believe it's a third generation company. I believe they live about 5 miles from here, and they've been residents for over 50 years. This is the type of infill I think Harwich needs. Someone mentioned earlier, our tax bills. What are we going to do going down the road? Maybe everyone can just afford it. Maybe no one's on a fixed income. But this is what communities do. They grow. They try to be what they're being and be what they do. But at the same time, you need infill. And that's what the center of town's all about. That's why people come to Harwich. And to try to wrap up, this parcel is in the commercial village, within the village commercial overlay district, which is the appropriate zoning for this project. And last and finally, anyone that thinks this is going to be a traffic problem has never been to Sunday school. I mean, how can you say leaving Sunday school there with 47 cars coming out every 10 minutes is safer than one car coming in and out? So I don't get that. So thanks for your patience. Have a good night.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, Barbara Nickerson, 617 Route 28. How are you all? Sorry. So I'm going to just address a couple of areas real quickly. This is a special permit request. The conditions of approval is the use developed will not adversely affect the neighborhoods. And I know Ms. Rose provided an English lesson for us and her determination and opinion of what adverse effect is, but she doesn't live across the street and I probably so can't hear. Real close. Right, you, the planning board, have a great latitude on adverse effect to the neighbors. So here's my list of adverse effects. Changes in community character. It's a big monstrosity versus historic single family and revised single families that are now shops. Increased traffic and parking issues. Year-round versus seasonal. About 13 extra spaces, the numbers may be off a little bit. So where are they all going to go? They're going to park on Bayview? They're going to go to park Melrose parking lot? They're going to park on Freeman? Where will the service people park? What about all your parties on the big rooftop? Of which I still like to see a schematic of that, because that's one area you have not shown us, what the big rooftop gardens look like. Environmental issues. Will everyone be walking their dogs on my lawn, letting them use it for their bathroom? No open space at ground level, so assume no kids will live there. Visual and privacy issues. You're asking us to look at a 3-story building year-round. Some of us do live here year-round, with or without vegetation to hide it. Some people are only 20 foot from the solid 39, 37-foot wall in their yard or their house. The building will have windows, balconies, decks, roof gardens for your description, looking over and into nearby houses, inside and in the yard. Lots of privacy issues. I thought that was a pretty slick move that you did, Ms. Rose, by applying for a permit under CB and RL, not the CB overlay district. That way you don't have to meet the requirements of the overlay district. A permit with the district would require development be in keeping with the historic development patterns, including the size and spacing of structures and additional open space. Now, I don't understand why, if a property's in the overlay district, why aren't they following it? Why is somebody given an option to follow it or not follow it? I have to say, though, if it was a smaller size, which we talked about before, I'll bet we wouldn't be gathered here tonight opposing this project if it had been done right the first time. But you want to be good neighbors, right? I'd like to read into the record a recommendation in the draft local comprehensive plan. Review, evaluate, and consider revising the 2-family, multifamily, and mixed-use zoning bylaw with the aim to incentivize density development opportunities as appropriate in exchange for affordable and attainable housing. Now, back on May 1st, you made it loud and clear that there was no affordable nor attainable housing associated with this project. Why not? I mean, other than from a monetary standpoint for you. Do your prospective buyers not want to live in the same building as their house cleaner? We need housing for people that work here. And one day your 3-bedroom, $1.8 million condo owner might have to clean their own house.
And I live at 93 Bank Street. I'm a direct abutter to the proposed condominium building. I've owned this property since 2011 and have spent my summers in Harwich Port since childhood. I have some comments, but first I also have a question, I guess, for the zoning board.
We have to go to a different meeting. It's the planning board.
Planning board. So if this multifamily use permit is granted to Campanelli, and they decide to go forward, Campanelli goes forward to build a multifamily housing building, are they required to follow exactly their plans that have been presented? I understand you can put conditions on it, but they can't later decide, oh, we're going to do an apartment building, something else.
It's the whole idea.
Yeah, okay, all right. The corner of my backyard backs up to the proposed parking lot for the building by about 8 feet. I'm in full agreement with many others who've spoken against this project the other night, last time that we all met, and then tonight. I could go on and on with my many issues, but the main idea is that the property is enormous in scale and not at all in keeping with the style and character of the other buildings in the town. I also wanted to speak up about the issues the project presents to me as a direct abutter and to my neighborhood. In order for the town to approve the special permit for multifamily use, the project must meet certain conditions that are in the zoning bylaw, section 325-51. The first condition reads, which has been mentioned several times tonight, the use as developed will not adversely affect the neighborhood. As an abutter, my property will back up to the proposed parking lot. This piece of land is currently zoned residential. It was residential when I purchased my property. A parking lot of 28 spaces to me is, of course, not residential. If this is allowed, my backyard and neighborhood will certainly be adversely affected. I will be affected by the noise of people and car doors slamming during the day and into all hours of the night. Also, the parking lot lighting will shine into my backyard as well as my neighbors' yards. Although Campanelli is making some effort to mitigate lighting with low-level lights, I do still believe I'm going to see more light. And right now I see none, so I will see light. And also there will be far more noise than what I hear now, you know, beep beep of morning delivery trucks and all, and people on their roof decks. You know, I just know that I don't understand how anybody could say that their neighbors would not be adversely affected by this. Let's see, yeah, so the roof decks, I am concerned with that. I have an outdoor shower. Do I want to take an outdoor shower when there's people with roof decks and look out? No, I will not be taking outdoor showers if this is built. My house, many of the houses that abut the proposed building and parking lot are over 100 years old. As such, it's my understanding that if I would like to make a change to the structure of my house by partially demolishing something on its surface, the town would require me to file a notice of intent with the Harwich Historical Commission and be subject to a public hearing on the matter. And yet, right in this neighborhood of homes, over 100, there's several of them over 100 years old, with features that are historically significant, a developer would like to build an enormous structure that doesn't fit in at all with the surrounding homes behind it and next to it. And does this make sense to the town or its neighboring, of the surrounding neighborhood? So, following zoning regulations, I don't know how anyone could say that this proposed condo building and parking lot doesn't adversely affect the neighborhood. I respectfully request the planning board to deny the applicant's request for special permit and waivers and send them back to design a project that is on a much smaller scale in keeping with the size and style of the other commercial buildings in town and one that does not adversely impact the residential homes that abut or are close to the property.
That work? Loud enough?
Yep.
Bob Nickerson, 617 Route 28. My family's been in Harwich continuously for 346 years. My family's been in the house we're in for 144 years. We're right across the street. So I have some concerns of where we're going. So let me give you some facts. The town of Harwich now has two cultural districts. One in Harwich Center, one in Harwich Court. Designated in 2023, January. Statutory language for cultural district. Section 3, Chapter 10, Section 58A was amended to include the additional wording. In the first paragraph, it states, preserve and reuse historical buildings, enhance property values, and foster local cultural development. Right now, I'm going to give you a list of houses that are historic in that area. 93 Bank Street, 1840. 89 Bank Street, 1840. 85 Bank Street, 1870. 611 Route 28, 1880. My house, 1796, 617. 616, 1860. 620, 1935, the young one. 621, 1830. I'm just trying to give you a feel of what's around there and what they're putting next to us. Comments. The significant overbuild of this lot clearly will impact the surrounding neighborhood and thus adversely affects us who is invested in the safe historic fabric of this section of Harwich Court by maintaining the structures for continued use in the future. A more realistic structure that was designed to reflect the historic nature of this area that is not more than 2 stories and has a smaller footprint would likely be more amenable to the adjacent homeowners and the full-time residents of Harwich. Per the Planning Board, the Board of Appeals has a specific criteria that must be met to approve this application. Documentation was provided by the applicant on the definition of adverse. So I looked at what is the opposite of adverse. Favorable, beneficial, advantageous, positive. Think of those values or names or what I said, so when you're making your decision. I don't believe these reflect what's being proposed. What other concerns have been addressed? Off-site parking for guests of owners. Will the town install no parking signs on side streets such as Bayview Road? They existed years ago, but they slowly disappeared. Assuming that all units are fully utilized, what is the impact of the local neighborhood with a potential of maximum 132 people on site if every bedroom has 2 people per bedroom? This is a significant impact to the neighborhood. And just think, if they have 1 dog per condo, now we have 28 dogs in the neighborhood. I believe one of the slides says no nuisance. Tax revenue to the town has been stated as $190,000. Wow, $190,000. In 2026, we budgeted $48,127,931 and a capital outlay of $44,867,149 for a total of $92,995,080. So their level of contribution is 0.02% to our budget. Wow. Likely this will even cost the support required by the town for this new building. Stated in the PP, meaningfully limiting the short-term rentals to leases of 2 per month. I think that's great. But in talking to an attorney, my attorney, I understand these conditions, even if included in the original deeds, could be changed if the future condo association would vote to modify this and have the deeds revised. So I think you need to consider that. My viewpoint, you as current owners, if approved, will come to this project when it comes to the market that specifically owns and manages the condo units such as these. You won't even be around. You'll sell it out. So how can the public be confident and the town be confident any condition agreed upon will be honored, such as a high-level maintenance program inclusive of not only building but grounds including shrub, trees, and fence replacement? I do appreciate you providing alternatives that might be considered as well. I don't think Harwich needs another restaurant with a new 100-seat one being built a block away. It would likely be only operational part-time and not being having 24-hour living. Or maybe a multi-family unit that could have attainable housing. Or retail again. Seems a bit saturated in Harwich, but why not? FYI, the sidewalk on the north side of Ember is not going to be constructed any further than it is now. It's about 20 feet from the Ember entry. Thank you very much.
Will that work?
That'll work.
Okay. Marta Bate, Melrose. Okay. I found it interesting that you used as these positive points on there, one of them being you spoke to abutters. I don't know anybody at the Melrose that you came and spoke to. I thought it was interesting that you chose an interesting definition of adverse, because I pulled my phone out and it came out unfavorable. The Melrose is coming up as a comparison. The Melrose was modeled after a historic building in this town. This monstrosity is not. Lastly, a point that was brought up a lot earlier in the evening, I'm really hoping you all are going to look more deeply into the issue of line of sight. Going around that corner from that really dangerous intersection that you've noted. I'm not convinced that that's a safe line of sight.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm Matt Sutcliffe, Lexington Drive, former resident of the neighborhood. I became acquainted with this property in 1957 when I delivered papers to Mrs. Smith, who had a house that no longer exists. It was torn down by Dr. Fennell, like a lot of other properties in town, torn down by Dr. Fennell, and now we seem to be paying the price as they're all getting filled up, redeveloped. And I want to speak to just one thing, because I do realize that the petitioners are here because they think they've got a green light. The one thing that has occurred to me is that perhaps this planning board does not want to be the board that creates the first below-grade parking space in Harwich. A cursory look on Google indicates that the fire department has several concerns when it comes to conflagration in a parking garage. It also should be recognized that there's a drainage system for a parking garage, which means that there are sump pumps and drainage all throughout this planned parking garage, which means that the excavation will be deeper than the 10 feet registered this evening. So that's my point. I hope that you'll put a fine pencil on whether or not you want to urbanize Harwich by advocating and creating the first below-grade parking lot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Peter Poirier. I live here on Sisson Road. Grew up in Harwich, as many of the previous speakers have. I'm going to steer away from what I was going to talk about specifically retail. I know a lot of people online and a lot of the social media commentary, and perhaps this board should focus a little bit on the arguments for and against mixed use in the downtown Harwich Port District. This is a horrible location for retail. For anyone that thinks that this site, and I'm a huge fan of Sunday school, I met these guys on May 1st, never met them before, and now carry their ice cream at my store in Orleans, but only because I met them here. This is a really, really bad site for retail. And I'll say that because I know as a retail business owner and a year-round business in a similar condition, I've looked up and down Route 28 for new locations for an outpost for my own store. This is a 16-week business. This is mostly for those online or those that think that Sunday school should remain, setting aside the condo development proposal that we're talking about. Anyone that thinks that Sunday school should remain there and that a 65-plus unit parking lot that is paved, impervious, is like the one in Dennisport, which is not, that is pervious, doesn't understand groundwater, okay? This site is a poor contribution. It is, I'll take some liberty here, the very definition of lowest and worst use. It is a seasonal business. It contributes negligible tax dollars to our community, and though it does employ wonderful kids from Monomoy High School, about 40 of them each summer, they are part-time jobs. They are not year-round jobs, and the store is open for about 15 or 16 weeks. It also does create, and I worked for 10 years under Tom Menino in Boston, under the planning agency, it contributes vastly more traffic to Route 28 between Freeman and Bank than any residential project ever was, and I think they're being nice. I'm telling you, it's a better use for the site as a professional who practices in this. So some of the arguments are reasonable, and some just frankly are not. The last thing that I want to tease out for you to think about and the board to think about as a currently hiatus member of the LCP, and one of my friends from the committee is here who's in a butter. If this became a residential apartment project, I caution you all as neighbors, you best support it. If this were to change to a rental workforce housing project and anyone in this room opposes it, then I will say you really don't understand where we are right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Matt Sutton again. A rejoiner, I guess. It had occurred to me that were you to pass on the availability of underground parking, those cars will have to be somewhere. And what that should mean is that the footprint would have to shrink. So I just hope that might be a possibility. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Richard Waystack, the property at 565 Route 28 in Harwich Port. And my name has been brought up a couple of times tonight, so I wanted to clarify a few things. I wanted to correct a previous speaker, talking about the first underground parking in Harwich. We have had underground parking in Harwich, and if you take a ride down to the Belmont condominiums, there has been underground parking there for years. But I want to clarify the comments about housing in town. This data, not opinion, this data is from 8 p.m. tonight. There are 61 properties for sale currently in Harwich. 64% of them are over $1 million. 39% of them are over $2 million. In the past 5 years in the town of Harwich, since 2020, the average sale has increased in this community from $592,000 to $1.1 million. There is one property in town under $600,000. It's a 2-bedroom ranch with 1,000 square feet at $600,000. Housing is needed. Mr. Gorey is correct. People have talked about attainable housing and rental housing, and we see the outcry over Pine Oaks Village, over the Penrose project that's going to happen at 456 Queen Anne Road. These numbers are unsustainable. We all have properties in Harwich Port or in Harwich. People want to be here. Change has happened dramatically in Harwich Port since my time, 40 years in this community. The Rexford restaurant has changed. It is now another restaurant. Bodot's Bakery is now a new retail shop. Butler's is now another restaurant in town. The Modern Theater that many went to, is now retail shops. I want to commend the planning board because you're conducting hearings, hearing opinions from a lot of folks, trying to find the facts and trying to find the law. The law that you operate under that establishes criteria for development in this community. We have close to an $85 million budget in this town, and people are screaming about taxes already. As an assessor in this community, we give out over $450,000 in tax credits to people who are struggling to make ends meet. We need housing in this community. As I said, 64% of the market right now is properties over $1 million. These properties are going to be the average property in Harwich. Not the luxury, not the crazy numbers. The crazy numbers of the $4 and $5 million new homes that are being built in this community. And if you look down the street, the corner of Snowman Road in 28, a very, very large single-family home is being built. If you go down Snowman Road, the second house on the right, a massive house is being built. So when we talk about density, we see what's happening in individual neighborhoods. But those houses are being built under the laws that this community, this planning board created for zoning in this community. So I urge you to follow the law, to follow the criteria. And when I last looked at the charter and the bylaws of this community, the planning board is not the design review committee. You look at the requirements that the law states to allow for development. I ask you to follow the law. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I also want to say, why you forgot the Sword and the Shield and the Old Kino Lodge.
Yes.
Come on.
Lee Scarborough, 1136 Harbor Road. I don't think that the fact that we need more housing means we need to accept some housing that we don't want. Some other alternatives have been proposed. I certainly agree with all of you who say that this building is just not in the character of Cape Cod. That is why we live here, is for that. That's why people come to Harwich, is to feel the way the town is. I have friends come to Harwich and goes, what a lovely place you live in. You're really lucky, right? We don't live in the city. We don't need a condominium. So, you know, you can put, all the frills can be perfect. You can have your landscaping rights. You can have your zoning approved. You can have even the underground parking may work, but still, you're putting an elephant into our community. How many of you don't want it? Let's hear your hands.
Well, you should be addressing the board. This is not
I'm sorry.
not for a vote. So I'm sorry. Thank you very much, sir.
Sorry about that.
Appreciate it. We have, I think, a number, like, what was it, 22 online people that we're going to get to. I've got to get.
One second, I forgot two things. One, I want to appreciate them mentioning the Melrose, because I don't really want two big buildings there, so that was really good for them to know. The other thing, this project is about greed, not need.
No more from the audience right now. Beg pardon? So nobody online wants to, nobody's raising their hand? They're not raising their hand? It's going once? Going twice? Okay. Yes, sir. We had somebody that wanted to address. I just wanted to make sure, thank you for coming back. I appreciate that.
I'm a newer member of this community. I just built a new construction house. I have a lot that's
Name and address, please.
Robert Majernik, 29 Sterling Road. I built a new construction house. I have a 15,000 square foot lot. I was allowed one bedroom in my house. This is 75,000 square feet, 5 times, which would mean 5 bedrooms. And they're proposing 66.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions here?
I guess I would have a point of order question. Any idea when what would be the next best meeting to attend for continuance? As far as the follow-ups that our traffic engineers have requested and the follow-ups that perhaps Christine and the board needs and the Board of Health. So just looking for kind of a...
From discussions with Christine, there's a meeting that's noticed for the 24th in the building room. And so we'd like to go as soon as possible. We understand that's...
I think we could do the 8th.
The 8th is what...
In this location.
Correct.
So I'd like to entertain a motion to continue until July 8th, until 6:30.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Motion's made, motion second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nay. Good. Yeah, we'll be back July 8th. We have further business there, although probably, I don't know how much more. I think we're in a good place, so why don't we entertain a motion to adjourn? All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody.